In this video, we're going to talk about 8 things only old school Valorant players remember. What's going on, guys? It's your host, Sergeant Frost. As we move into 2023, it is amazing to think that Valorant will be turning 3 years old next year on its birthday. The community today has been a good mix of new players that started as recently as this year, as well as some veterans that have been playing the game since it launched in 2020. Heck, some of you might even be old-timers like me that can remember keeping streams open all day to get one of those beta codes back in April of 2020. But that leads us into our video today, as we'll be covering the 8 things only OG players remember. The first thing on our list was when Jett was considered one of the worst agents in the game. Back in the earliest days of Valorant, and by early we mean beta and early episode 1, Jett was not the most loved nor most used agent in the community. Something you need to understand in order for this situation to make sense is that in the earliest days of the game being released, not much was known about all of the meta or what all the agents were truly capable of. No one knew Jett was a do-it-all agent that could safely be an AWPer, a rushing entry fragger, and everything in between. When the game came out, players were naive to what made an agent good within certain classes, and Jett stood out and not in a good way from her counterparts, especially considering what the other agents were in the duelist class at the time. A few good examples: Jett didn't have flashes, she didn't have sustainability in the form of a heal, and not much was known about her smoke dash combo. So many players viewed her as inferior, but after a few months, pro players figured out what she was capable of, and they started to showcase her strong in-game capabilities on streams and in tournaments. And then it didn't take long for the entire community to catch on after that. If you look back at it before she got her nerfs, Jett used to have 3 really cheap smokes, she still had her insta-dash, her ultimate used to only cost 6 ultimate points, and back then her right click had a really tight spread and it used to reset on kill. I mean, it's really silly to think that Jett in her most powerful state was considered to be weak, but oh well. It just goes to show you how much can change in a game over a short period of time. While we're on the topic of what agents used to be on this list, let's talk about the spooky ghost boy Omen next. This is something only beta players would remember, but there used to be a time where Omen only had one way to throw out his smokes, and unfortunately it used to be the less ideal way. For many of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, Omen currently has 2 smoke deploy forms. The first and most commonly used way that I'm sure you're all aware of is the 3D schematics model, where he can precisely place down his smokes exactly where he wants them in real time. It's a super easy way to throw smokes down quickly, and it's very useful to line up one-ways even across walls. This method of using his smokes was not the original way, however, as it was only created and implemented when Valorant officially launched in episode 1. The old way that is still available by pressing R is where Omen uses a small icon on his map to place smokes, and to make it even worse, he can only move the icon backwards and forwards in front of him. Yeah, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, go into a custom and try it out for yourself. But this nightmare of a system for throwing smokes was what he originally had back in beta. And thank God the devs heard our cries for a more intuitive system, because I cannot imagine playing now and that would be the only way to deploy his smokes. I mean, just try it for a game, you'll probably want to switch back within 5 rounds. Oh, and by the way, Omen used to be pretty cute back then as well. I mean, just look at him, look at those eyes. If you've been playing Valorant since at least episode 1 in 2020, you'll probably remember the game's first ever prominent meta, the multiple AWP meta. For anyone who doesn't remember those lovely days, let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a world where the operator is cheaper than it currently is. It had better overall stats, and it was much more forgiving with its movement penalties. Yeah, that gun was the operator back in 2020. So how did this meta come to be, you might ask? Well, first off, the AWP used to only cost 4,500 credits originally, instead of the 4,700 it does now. Plus, back in episode 1, there wasn't much vision blocking utility and people had way less of an idea of how to play around their initiators. And on top of that, Jett was coming into the meta for the first time as a strong AWPing duelist before she got any nerfs. Even sentinels like Killjoy and Cypher used to be king because they could set up their traps and then hold long angles in the back of a bomb site with an AWP or a Vandal. And when that was taking place, no attacking team could walk in without a real plan. The AWP was certainly a tool that was abused on defense by a plethora of agents. But outside of it being a good weapon to use to hold long angles with, the operator used to be much cheaper, easier to use, and it was a lot stronger before it started getting stats nerfs. This meta was definitely something to experience. I still remember the raw fear I had in my body when attacking, knowing full well that the smallest overstep of a jiggle could result in an instant death with every corner I cleared. Even though I really do love the AWP, I'm kinda glad that it got nerfed at the end of the day. And since we're talking about overpowered things, we should mention, if you're serious about winning more games in the new year, you should check out our website ProGuides.com. With our new subscription, you can access everything on our website for only $8 a month. Be sure to check it out if you want to get a head start on climbing in episode 6 next year. Going back to the beta though, you can't say busted without saying Sage. If you didn't play during the beta, you probably never experienced the true frustration and sheer brokenness of Sage. This agent used to have a short cooldown heal that healed her and her allies back to 100 HP quickly. Her slows used to almost last 10 seconds and they slowed for a much bigger amount, which made it extremely hard to move through them. Her wall used to have 1000 HP per piece and lasted 40 seconds instead of 30, and back then it only used to cost 300 credits and there was no fortify period like there is now. And finally, her ultimate used to be 7 ultimate points instead of 8. Old Sage was truly an agent to behold back in beta and in early episode 1. Sage had too many good team tools and personal tools that were oppressive to play against. I still get chills thinking about Sage's old slows and wall before they got nerfed slowly over time, because it made her extremely hard to fight against no matter what. The good news is though, is that Riot quickly started to scale back Sage's power with a flurry of nerfs since beta and is still continuing on to this day. Here's a cool fun fact. Since her first ever nerfs back in patch 0.49 in the beta, Sage has never truly gotten an overall buff to any of her abilities. Yep, you heard me right. Sage has never gotten a single overall gameplay or numbers improvement to a single ability in her kit since she was released in beta. Now that should show you how overloaded this agent's gameplay design was from the start, and how overloaded her kit was in general. I do really hope they stop now though. She's had plenty of nerfs, and she is nowhere near as strong as she was even a year ago. Moving on to a lighter hearted topic, let's talk about old Viper. Ooh-wee, back in the day, everything about Viper's abilities and UI used to be ugly. I mean, her smoke wall looked ugly, the inside and outside of her ultimate used to be hideous, her mollies used to look like puke, walking through her orb and her ultimate used to drop a good computer's FPS down to double digits. I mean, the list goes on and on. Even beta players should remember the days when her poison counter used to be a small vertical bar in between her UI that was really hard to see. Back in the day when Tens was still coming up and he used to be a Viper main, you could go on his stream and find him grinding the agent out trying to discover new molly lineups and wall and smoke lineups that he could use in his Cloud9 scrims and matches. Oh, and for anyone who didn't remember, Tens technically started his Valorant career off with C9 and then he retired. Then he shortly came out of retirement to play for Sentinels. But yeah, Viper used to be not the most visually appealing agent back in time, especially considering what her abilities and her UI used to look like compared to today. Please don't tell me I'm the only person who remembers the Bucky being one of the most busted weapons in the game in 2021. This meta wasn't too long ago if you started playing last year. Basically, for those who didn't play during the Bucky meta, the Bucky right click used to be as powerful as a sniper back in the day. Before the nerfs, Bucky right click had more pellets per shot and it had a tighter pellet spread. So if you were somewhat accurate with your shots, the right click made the Bucky a short range AWP. And that was because it could one-shot body shot fully armored enemies up to a decently long 12 plus meters away. And God forbid you already took any damage beforehand, because if you did, then the Bucky could one-shot someone with a right click from across a bomb site. The worst part about the Bucky meta was that even though the right click made it famous, the left click spread used to be pretty OP back then too. Devs had to decrease the per pellet damage over range because of how many one-shot kills the primary fire was getting from long range too. You really just had to be there for the Bucky meta. No one was safe from players getting into cheap positions, praying they land a lucky one-shot on you with the Bucky, and considering the gun was so cheap at 900 credits, this was the ultimate save round gun because when you one-shotted an enemy at mid-range, you could punish an enemy's mistakes with ease and then pick up their weapon off the floor. This next section is a quick fun fact for anyone who didn't play in the beta, but the game's highest rank wasn't always called Radiant. In fact, in beta it used to be called the Valorant rank. For clearly obvious reasons, the devs realized their mistake in calling it this as it became very confusing since Riot decided to turn the game's name from Project A into Valorant when the game first came out. I mean, just try saying this sentence. Yeah, I achieved Valorant rank in Valorant today. Yeah, doesn't really roll off the tongue now, does it? Also, quick side note, does anyone else who played during the beta remember the Immortal rank icon used to be a yellowish gold before it became red? Well, I sure do. To wrap this video up, everyone playing the game now should be grateful that they never had to experience the 2-grenade Raze. Back in beta, Raze was an even bigger menace than she is today. During beta, Raze was a premier duelist because she could output so much firepower. I mean, she had 2 grenades that were pretty much stronger even individually, her boombot used to be cheaper and do more damage, and her ultimate used to be 6 ultimate points with a lot bigger one-shot range. Raze used to be quite the bottle rocket back in early of 2020, and all new players should thank their lucky stars that they didn't have to endure this pain and suffering that was this overpowered explosive Brazilian back in the day. And with that being said, that's our 8 things only OG players remember. Make sure to comment your favorite Valorant memory down below, and let us know if we missed anything on the list. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more. Thanks so much for watching. This has been your host Sergeant Frost, and I will see you all again in the next one.